Two alternative stable states in shallow lakes. One is what we call the clear water state, which is dominated by submerged aquatic plants, very low abundance of phytoplankton. And the other is the turbid water state dominated by phytoplankton with very low abundance of submerged aquatic plants. And alternative stable states are probably one of the biggest things that have happened in ecology in the last 15 years. And shallow lakes were the first ones that they documented them in. They've now been found in the ocean, coral reefs, prairie grasses, you name it. And so they're a really big deal for measurement purposes. And these two systems are relatively stable. You're in one versus the other. It's not like you get kind of a little bit of algae, a little bit of macrophytes, so you're either dominated by one or the other. But they do shift back and forth, and I'll talk more about what causes that a little bit later on. One thing I really want to emphasize is how different these systems are. The next time you're in an airplane, leaving Minneapolis, especially if you're flying west, just look out the window. And you'll see blue ones and you'll see green ones, and oftentimes they're sitting right next to each other. And traditionally people have looked at this and said, well, this one's got too many nutrients in it, and this one's got less nutrients in it, and that's what's causing this. And that's part of the story, but it's not incomplete. Or imagine you live next to one of these. And one year your lake looks like this, it's crystal clear water, lots of submerged aquatic plants, lots of ducks. And then 1 year later you come back, the plants are gone, and it's pea green soup with algae. So these lakes are very different, these two alternative stable states. It really begs the question to understand what causes the lake to be clear versus turbid, and what causes them to bounce back and forth. And that's what we'll talk about today. Specifically, I want to do four things. First, give you a kind of a crash course in shallow lake ecology and alternative stable states from kind of an ecology perspective, just so we're all on the same page. Then part two, kind of getting the meat and potatoes of our research. First question, what is the historical pattern of alternative stable states on the landscape? We know what the proportion of turbid lakes is across the state now, in the present day, but what was it like 150 years ago before we really started developing the landscape? A lot of people think turbid states never existed before, but is that true or not? And then really the main question, what are the primary drivers of lake shifting states? Is it phosphorus, is it fish, is it both, or other factors involved? And then kind of, as Meg said, what are the implications, the who cares part of the talk? Why should we be concerned about alternative stable states and shallow lakes and conservation? What do they do to ecosystem services? Before I get going, I really want to acknowledge all of my collaborators. What we talk about today has involved a lot of different people bringing a lot of different skills to the table and over the last really decade of research. Jim Conner, Leah, Domine, Brian Herwig, and Mark Hansen, and myself are kind of the modern day ecologists studying what the lakes are doing in the present day. We teamed up with some paleo ecologists, Will, Kevin, Joy, and Mark, that have reconstructed what these lakes have done in the past. And our most recent addition is John Feberg and his graduate student Kelsey, University of Minnesota. They're quantitative ecologists that have kind of taken our data analysis skills to new levels. And of course, and I got pictures of Christine in here eventually, lots of St. Thomas undergraduates that did all the work and actually contributed a lot of their own independent research to the project. In fact, later on we'll talk about Luke Ginger and Luke Noby's work as part of what these alternative states mean for ecosystem services. And then finally, our various sources of funding and media off. So part one, crash course in shallow lake ecology. What are we talking about? This is probably a slide everyone in this room could give. I'm going to go to the definition that DNR uses, the maximum depth of 5 meters or less. That's the DNR definition. Why 5 meters? It allows submerged aquatic plants to grow along the entire bottom of the lake. When that happens and they're that shallow, you get alternative stable states. You get much deeper than that, and lakes do not exhibit alternative stable states. You have to be 5 meters or less in depth. And also known as type 5 wetlands. Why do we care about them? There's a lot of them. 5,000 or more in Minnesota are larger than 20 hectares in size. It's even more amazing at the global scale. One thing I really love that's happened in limnology the last 5 years is an appreciation for small bodies of water. Everybody used to say, oh, Lake Superior is important. It is. But these little things really drive ecosystem processes at the global scale. So 300 million out of 304 million lakes at the global scale are small, shallow, and important. And then in terms of ecosystem services, are critical for the flood reduction, wildlife and fisheries habitat, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll talk about the implications of alternative states for this stuff a little bit later on. Just to point out, in case I forget to say this, the systems I'm talking about today, the things we work on, average about 20 hectares in size. They're about 2.5 meters maximum depth or less, so even smaller and shallower than some of the data listed up there. We like to study for lots of different reasons. First, they're challenged logistically, no boat ramps, so you get to make our own boat launches. We can't even use boats, so we got to figure out ways to do everything in canoes. You get to work with a lot of cool fish, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, carp and bullheads, and then of course, other interesting vertebrates and polyp ones. This is kind of a slide, so you pay attention to catch the moves inside the elevator. If you want to borrow that slide, just let me know. I did. You see that multiple times in presentations and shell legs. But what really makes them tick, and what really makes them interesting are these alternative stable states. As I mentioned earlier, there's the clear water state dominated by submerged aquatic plants, and the turbid water state dominated by phytoplankton. Just out of curiosity, how many people are kind of familiar with this concept? A little bit? So I'll go through it pretty quick, but please, the whole time, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'd rather address the questions as we go right to the end. So you can talk about and try to understand these alternative stable states using these food web diagrams. So the clear water state, this is what really illustrates how important these food web interactions are. In the clear water states, you have really high abundance of predatory fish, piscivores as they're called, like the pike. You have strong predation pressure on minnows and carp. Things we call planktivores and benthivores. So their abundance is low, so there's relatively low predation pressure. Here's Daphne again. Daphne, other aquatic invertebrates. Daphne are really important, as Meg said, because they are the primary consumers of phytoplankton. So if you have a lot of Daphnia, the grazing rates are incredibly high and they can keep the algae in check. In fact, we've done estimates where when you flip a lake clear, kill off the fish, the Daphnia filtration rates, every drop of water in the lake will go through their stomach 3 times a day. The algae just can't keep up. So we got strong grazing pressure from invertebrates, the algae is low, light reaches the bottom of the lake. Aquatic macrophytes get stimulated, they form a protective carpet all the way from one side to the other. The really key thing, though, is that the macrophytes, and really the paraphyte that grows on in that slimy algae stuff, sucks the nutrients out of the water column so that there's no phosphorus or nitrogen left for the phytoplankton. So even if something happens to your aquatic invertebrates and their numbers go down, the lake can still stay clear because all the nutrients are tied up in the submerged aquatic plants that are paraphyte. So the stabilizer for this clear water state are these submerged aquatic plants. As long as they're there, you're not going to go turbid. All right? Turbid water state is opposite. There might not be any predatory fish where the abundance is low. You've got lots of planktivores and benthivores, minnows and carp. We're eating all the invertebrates. Nobody's eating the algae, so the water stays green. Water's too turbid, no light reaches the bottom of the lake, and the plants can't get established. Now, the macrophytes stabilize the clear water state. These fish stabilize the turbid water state. As long as you maintain high abundance of planktivores and benthivores, the Daphne can't get going and clear the water, so you stay in the turbid water state. Right? So that's what makes it different from deeper lakes, is you get this strong influence of these submerged aquatic plants. So they're relatively stable, but they can switch back and forth. What makes them switch? Something has to happen to the plants. The water depth goes up. Right? If you have the same turbidity level, you increase water depth, less light reaches the plants, a few plants die off, nutrients go into the water column, you get more algae, and you roll over to the turbid water state. Or perhaps your predatory fish die off, you get higher biomass here, you might get a lot of common carp. Carp are really important because, as you probably know, they feed in the sediments, and they will literally uproot the plants, they'll kill them. So too many carp damage the plants, and whoop, you pop over to the turbid water state. How do you get from turbid to clear? Something has to happen at this trophic level. If you have a winter kill, complete die-off of all the fish, nobody's eating the Daphne, they explode, the water clears, and whoop, you flip over to the clear water state. DNR knows this, right? So they manage for the clear water state, and how do they do it? They add road down to kill off all the fish, or they'll stock predatory fish to try to control this trophic level, because if this trophic level goes down, this goes up, this goes down, and poof, you go over to the clear water state. Or they draw the water all the way down with pumps. It freezes out in the wintertime, and basically it's an artificial winter kill, and again you flip over to the clear water state. Right? So these trophic interactions are really important with stabilizing and switching back and forth. Question?
Your term strong negative or weak negative, what does that mean?
Strong negative, I mean over here, because there's a lot of northern pike, the predation pressure has a strong negative impact on the amount of minnows and carp. Over here, there's not very many, so the effect is much weaker. Make sense? So this really illustrates well our conceptual understanding of what goes on in these lakes using these cartoons, but you can also come at it from a more theoretical application. So these types of relationships have been in the literature for quite a while. It's really looking at the same things just differently. So here we have nutrients from low to high, usually phosphorus. And on the y-axis we have turbidity or algal abundance, phytoplankton abundance. So what this shows is theoretically, this is not a mathematical model. This is what I love. That 40 years ago, somebody with nothing better to do sat down with a pen and pencil and a calculator and mathematically showed this, that alternative stable states should exist. And it took until about 20 years ago that we actually found them working in nature. It's always cool when the world actually follows mathematical equations. So what this is showing is that these really low nutrient levels below this dot, which is what's called a bifurcation point. Down here, nutrient levels like this, only the clear water state is possible. This line's dashed. You can only have the clear water state. No matter what happens with your fish community, et cetera, you'll never go turbid. Right? Likewise, if you're above this bifurcation point, only the turbid state is possible. Right? The nutrient levels up here are so high that the clear water state is not possible. So no matter what you do to the fish community, you can't get it to the clear water state. It's going to be maintained turbid. All right? But what's really interesting is between the two bifurcation points, this big black dashed line, that's where two states are possible. That's where there are alternatives. All right? So this is where fish are important. Because if you're sitting here, you get colonized by the brown carp, the system can flip turbid. Or you're sitting right here and there's a winter kill, you will flip down to the clear water state. All right? This is also a really important graph for management because it shows what we call hysteresis. You're a lake manager and phosphorus slowly creeps up on you. First thing is, nothing happens, right? The phosphorus levels are trending up, but chlorophyll A and the algae are increasing until you hit this bifurcation point, at which point, poof, you flip over to the turbid water state. Then you might be thinking, well, I'll just reduce nutrients a little bit and I'll go right back to the clear water state. And that's the concept of hysteresis. You flip over here and go turbid. No, you don't flip back if you get down to this point. You have to go all the way back over here, reducing nutrients to flip over to the clear water state. And that might be completely impossible. All right? So a lot of information for lake managers shows the role of nutrients for generating and stabilizing these two turbid water states. And then fish, very important between these two lines. But one question I always get in my ecology class, Meg probably asked it back a couple of years ago, how come there's no numbers on the graph? Right? It's all theoretical. That's because until recently, we didn't know what the numbers were. What is too much phosphorus so that lakes flip over to the turbid water state? The good news is we finally have quantified what these bifurcation points are, and I'll show you that information a little bit later on. All right, so that's kind of the background, the overview. Let's get into more of the research part of the talk. What's the historical pattern of alternative states in shallow lakes in Minnesota? Are there more turbid states now than there were 150 years ago? So we did a survey a few years back of 107 shallow lakes in 5 different regions of Minnesota. I'll show you that study a little bit later on. What it showed us is you have a hard time finding turbid states up in the woods. They're all clear. By the time you get down to the prairie regions, the transitional zones, you get almost half the lakes being in the turbid water state. Well, is that a lot? Is that what it was like historically? We didn't know. Well, I'm not a paleoecologist, but I've always been interested in that question. So we teamed up with people that do study what lakes did in the past. So we did. There's Will and Joy. Took sediment cores from 11 lakes in this study region out by Alexandria. Now, if you're not familiar with sediment cores, they're like tree rings. The mud from yesterday is right there, and the mud from 150 years ago is down at the bottom of the tube. So we cored 11 lakes, we dated it with lead 210. It tells you how old within a couple of years each cross-section of that core is. And then we quantified the diatom remains in 16 cross-sections per core. Why diatoms? They're wonderful for this type of work. Number one, they have basically a cell walls made out of glass, so they preserve really well in lake sediments. They don't decompose. The second thing is their ecologies are really specific. Some love turbid states, some are only found in clear water states. So if you're in one state or the other, your diatom community in the mud is going to reflect that. So then what we did is we did each cross-section was classified as turbid versus clear based on a statistical technique called cluster analysis. You're either in this bin or in that bin. And then, just to give you a feel for what these data look like, this is a lake called Mavis West. It's been in a turbid water state the last 15 years we've been studying it. You've got year on the y-axis here, and then across the top are a whole bunch of different diatom species shown as their percent of total abundance of all diatoms in the core, right? And you can probably guess how much work this is. I didn't do this, but I can appreciate sitting at the microscope and counting these microscopic diatom remains, thousands at a time. It's really, really cool data, but it's a lot of work. you don't even need statistics, right? You can look at this and say, well, before 1950, all the diatoms on the right dominated, and after 1950, lo and behold, all the diatoms on the left dominated. And what it turns out to be is cluster analysis said that every single cross-section before 1950 was in a clear water state. Then all of a sudden, 1950, boom, the lake changed, and for the last 50 years has been in a chronically turbid water state. Right? So you can see this visually, but also quantify it statistically. So then what we did, we've got these 16 cross-sections for 11 different lakes. We used a technique called detrended correspondence analysis. Sounds really fancy if you're not familiar with what it is. Basically, each one of these is a lake cross-section. And it groups those cross-sections together that have the most similar diatom communities. All right? So these two have very similar diatoms. This cross-section was the most different from this one. And axis 1 captures the most variability in those diatom communities. So these were very, very different from these cross-sections. Well, why do we do this? Rather than just saying turbid versus clear, how different are those actual cross-sections? And as it turns out, if we now throw on top our cluster analysis, all the turbid state cross-sections are on the right, and all the clear ones, with just 2 exceptions, are on the left. And so what this axis 1 gives us, 0.6 on axis 1 is a threshold in the diatom communities between being clear on the left versus turbid on the right. And so what that suggests is the lakes that are way over here are a long way from switching. They're stable clear. These are stable turbid, and these guys are kind of probably bouncing back and forth real close to the thresholds. That make sense? So now the interesting thing is, what did these lakes do through time, right? We can do more than just say, well, they're turbid versus clear. How turbid, how clear are they? How stable are they? So now what you're looking at, what is the pattern through time for these 11 lakes? There's 3 different types of lakes in the data set. First one is chronically clear. And I want to walk you through this so this makes sense. Here's time, right? We're going back in time for the core. So these are the 16 different cross-sections. Y-axis is time. Here's the DCA score. So all we did is we pulled out how that lake scored somewhere in here, grabbed its score along the DCA axis, and that becomes the same X over here. Does that make sense? So maybe this will help. Here's an example. Here's what Blakesley, right here, did through time. There's the blue dot, there's Blakesley, and if you go, didn't do anything. Over 150 years, it barely wiggled along axis 1. Stable, clear system. All right? You can see that. Here's that dashed line as the threshold. None of these lakes get very close to that threshold at all. They're chronically stable. All right? Second group of lakes, what we call transitional. You probably guess what these lakes did. Through time, they either got really close to that transitional line, or more recently, they flipped over, that's the gray zone, into the turbid water state. And so if we look at the example of these lakes through time, this one I think is Lake Ord, right there in the light blue. Wiggles around a little bit, but then it actually does cross over that threshold. But that's a lake that a manager could probably go into, kill off the fish community, and get it to flip back clear because it's awfully close to that threshold line, right? Now you can probably guess what the third group of lakes are. Chronically turbid. So here, these are lakes that either shifted quite a ways back. Lieberson was about the first to go in 1915. Davis West thereafter. These are lakes that once they cross that threshold, they stayed pretty well in the turbid water state. As an example of this, just to put it all in perspective, here's Davis West. I showed you the data for earlier. 150 years ago, it was as clear as any of those other lakes, right? Sitting way off to the left, but through time, this is what it did, and way over to the right. Now, lake manager goes to that lake, they're going to have a really hard time flipping it over to clear because they're in a relatively clear state. So 3 different groups of lakes, clear, transitional, and turbid. Big question is, why did some shift and some didn't? We'll come back to that in a minute. But what reinforces to us that these sediment records are really reflecting reality is they document some things we know happened in the past. I was a graduate student, not much older than Meg, back at North Dakota State University with Bill Bison in 1997. Ord was fishless for 3 years that I was studying it. All of a sudden I got colonized by fathead minnows right here, and it went turbid. We got some road down, we killed off the fathead minnows, went back clear. 2 years later, went back turbid. bouncing back and forth between states, and lo and behold, that record is recorded in the last 30 years for that lake. Likewise, Frohlan was the worst looking lake you've ever seen in your life. It was so green it looked like somebody painted it. We did another study where we dumped walleyes in there to eat the fathead minnows. And we did that in 2001, and we almost got it to flip clear. It cleared for a few months, but then the walleyes died off and it flipped back a little bit, and you see that huge perturbation in the data set as well. So we're really confident that these cores really do reflect what happened in the past in these lakes. And the main take-home message is all lakes were cleared until 1915. Remember, we're working in the regions of the state that have the highest proportion of lakes in the turbid water state. So 150 years ago, you'd have a hard time finding lakes with domination of submerged aquatic plants. There's three different types of lakes. They're either cleared in a stable state, stable in the turbid water state, or they're unstable transitional lakes through time. And lastly, leading into part 3 here, these lakes all shifted to the turbid water states at different points in time, making it really difficult to pinpoint, is there one mechanism that caused it in all these lakes? It's not like 1865, all the lakes flipped turbid when the state got developed. They've all done it at different points in time, suggesting it's a very complex relationship. So that brings me to part 3. What's going on here? Why are some of these lakes shifting to turbid states and others remaining clear? Historically, people have focused on the role of phosphorus. More recently, fish is important. Are they both important, or are there other factors we haven't considered? One thing is, if you look in the cores, you can infer how much phosphorus there was in the water column using the diatoms. They're just the neatest things ever. You know the concentrations of phosphorus over the last 150 years. And as you guys probably guessed and you've heard, phosphorus went up in every single lake through time. But there was no smoking gun with when the lakes shifted. They all kind of just gradually increased, and they all shifted at different points in time. So it's tough to say that there were phosphorus changes over the last 150 years. If you look at the modern day, right, how much phosphorus there was in 2009 for these 11 lakes that we cored, there is a pattern where the highest phosphorus levels are in the lakes in the turbid water state, lowest in the clear state, suggesting, hey, maybe that's what caused it, right? The problem, though, is I'm going to show you in a little bit. We've done further analyses that any phosphorus level between these two red lines, that's that bifurcation zone where both states are possible, right? So why did some lakes shift and others didn't when phosphorus levels are high enough that they all could have shifted states? Well, perhaps it's fish. Same exact pattern here again, lowest fish biomass. And I should point out from here on out, whenever I say fish biomass, I'm meaning that trophic level that has the negative impacts on lakes, so the planktivores and the benthivores. I'm not going to talk about northern pike and piscivores at all. These are the fish that favor the turbid water state for the rest of my talk. So what you see is the pattern you might expect, lowest in the clear states, highest in the turbid water states. So is it one, is it both, is it their combined effects? That's what we don't know. You can't tell very well from a study using just 11 lakes. So we followed that up with this 107 lake study that I mentioned earlier, where we sampled 107 lakes, 5 different ecoregions during July of 2009 to 2011. The Lynn Lake features, we measured abundance of fish, submerged aquatic plants, invertebrates, algae, as well as nutrient levels. Just some really quick methods. We sampled the fish communities using these gill nets and mini fight nets, submerged aquatic plants with a weighted plant rake. It's not as much fun as Lauren's making it out to be. Aquatic invertebrates with a column sampler and a sweep net, and then water chemistry using standard water chemistry procedures. The watershed data came from Sean Vaughn of Minnesota DNR. He's, you're probably aware of this, has developed a statewide watershed model so that he can delineate, has delineations for even the small water bodies that we work with. What this allowed us to do is he digitized the watershed, allowing us to go in and digitize land use within the watershed. He also was able to determine whether or not our lakes were connected to another permanent fish source, a river or a type 5 wetland, which will become more important later on in the talk. We like to refer to this as the study that will never happen again. It was kind of one of those, what were we thinking when we planned this? Anytime you pick 107 lakes across the state of Minnesota, you got to find places to actually do this. So there she is. What was that, in 2009, as you're just graduating from St. Thomas, off to being a wetland scientist. doing water chemistry in DNR back offices. I mean, what does the hotel maid think when she comes in to clean your room? Anytime you let the computer pick where the lakes are, they put them as far from the road as possible. Beaver dams are in the way. But I love this photo because you know you've got dedicated undergraduates when they're doing the water filtration on the kitchen counter, but they're making their dinner on the floor. So a lot of work, we'll never do it again, but a lot of good data came up. So our first big question here is what's the best model for predicting whether lakes are turbid versus clear? So we use what's called an information theoretic approach. I'm not going to get into details too much. If you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer them when we get done. But we built models constructed the following variables. We just factored out region because we had to. There's spatial association among our sites. And then row crop agriculture versus natural area in the watershed. Natural area is just something that wasn't planted with crops. You know, forest, could be prairie, et cetera, et cetera. Watershed size, and then phosphorus levels in the lake. So these three variables are really what we call bottom-up influences. How many nutrients are actually available in the system? Lake size, why is that important? Bigger lakes are more susceptible to shifting turbid because wind, you've got a bigger fetch on a bigger lake, it can have a much more negative impact on the vegetation, might be more likely to flip them turbid. Why lake depth? I should say this is lake size, that's the wind effect on plants. Lake depth, if you have the same algae level in two lakes and one's deeper than the other, the deeper lake is getting less likely to submerge aquatic plants, so it might be more likely to flip to a turbid water state. And then fish biomass are our friends and planktoners and predators. Then determine the most supportive or most parsimonious model using AICC, delta AIC, and evidence ratios. So what we found was exactly what theory predicts. The best supported model was comprised of both phosphorus and fish biomass. Really strong support compared to the second best model, delta AIC of 24.1. But this is probably the number that means the most. Our top model had 10,000 times more support than our second best model. So these two variables are the smoking guns. For traditional p-values, all of our parameters are significant. So green is in the turbid state, blue is in the clear water state. This is logistic regression basically, so you've got fish biomass increasing here, and the probability to be in a clear water state here. This is at the average phosphorus level in these lakes. And you can see you've got almost 100% chance of being clear until you reach moderate fish biomass. And then it drops to about a 50-50 chance of being turbid. All right, so there's a fish effect there, but it's not as big an effect as phosphorus. Over here we got phosphorus, same thing, clear, 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 until you get to moderate levels of phosphorus. By the time you get to the highest levels of phosphorus, there's a 99% chance you're going to be turbid. So the phosphorus effect is much stronger than the fish biomass. But they're both equally important, they're both supported in this model. And what's interesting is, this is why you surround yourself with people like Kelsey. I just did some logistic regression, we called it good. She came along with Bayesian statistics, used the exact same data set, and she estimated those bifurcation points the first time in the literature, all right? So we're looking at same 107 lakes, 2009, 2010, 2011. Please do not ask me how she did this. I can give her an email and she can fill you in. But up here we got the turbid lakes, down there the clear lakes across the 3 years. What these yellow regions are they have the credible interval. We're 95% sure that the bifurcation point between states is inside that lower, or this yellow area. What that means is down here, a lake manager is completely confident their lake will not flip to a turbid water state. Likewise, here's the upper bifurcation estimate. If you're up here, you're only going to have a turbid water state. And in between these two regions, that's where the lakes flip back and forth, and you've got two alternative stable states. So for the first time ever, we've quantified, she did, I gave her the data and turned it loose, she's quantified these bifurcation points, and they're pretty consistent across the 3 years. So what this means is now next year I go to my general ecology class, I can put this graph up here, and we can put some numbers on it. If you have phosphorus levels less than 50 micrograms per liter, boom, only the clear water state is possible. If you're above 250, you're in a world of hurt because no matter what you do, that lake will remain turbid. And if you're in between, that's when you can do various management techniques to try to flip it over to the clear water state. Now there's a credible interval there, right? We're not saying this is a magic number, but it's pretty precise around that number. We've got data that we can give lake managers. So this is important, tells us a lot about the phosphorus and what it does to these alternative stable states. But where do the fish come into play? The fish are important because fully fully half of our lakes have phosphorus levels that fall between those two bifurcation points. So they've got either state possible. That's where fish are important. So what drives fish biomass in the systems? That's the follow-up question. So we use the same exact data set. If you're going to spend all that work, you might as well milk it for everything we've got. 107 lakes across 5 regions. And we asked the question, why do some lakes have high fish biomass and others don't? And the same setup here, information theoretic approach. Again, factored out region. Then use 4 predictor variables. Are you connected to a fish source? Yes or no. Fish source being a stream or another type 5 wetland. Something that Sean Vaughn identified as a water flow network, that the 2 systems were connected. Sometimes they're not. Watershed size, why is that important? The bigger the watershed, the more snow melt you get in the spring, more water flowing somewhere that the fish can swim upstream to and colonize your site. Lake size, why? Because a bigger population of fish in a bigger lake can be less likely to winter kill. The lake depth, deeper you are, the less likely you are to have winter kill. So one way to think about these variables is like island-bound geography. That rings a bell in the back of your brain for understanding why things live on islands. These 2 variables basically describe, can the fish get there in the first place, right? You can't have fish in a lake if they can't get there. Well, that's what those 2 variables explain. And then once they get there, can they stay there or are they eliminated by winter kill, etc.? So we use the same model selection approach and found the best models based on AIC and all those other parameters. We again found a smoking gun. We could predict pretty well fish biomass in lakes across these regions based on lake size and connectivity. Again, huge support over the second best model. What this shows is lake surface area, as you get bigger, fish biomass catch per unit effort in those gill nets and trap nets goes up. Big effect as you go from the smallest lake to the biggest lake. I think the fish biomass goes up something like 5 or 6 fold. But an even bigger effect is being connected. At any lake size, if you are connected, fish biomass doubles. So if you're lake manager, now you've got some information to work with. Somebody wants to put a culvert onto your lake, they've got water control structure problems. If you get connected to a permanent source of fish, the biomass in your lake, even if you already had fish, is going to double. Why does it double? Because your lake probably periodically experiences winter kill and you've just got a new source for fish to recolonize and replenish the population every single spring. People are always surprised how come lake depth isn't on this. It's not. It's a really weak factor. It predicts whether you have fish or not. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But it's lake size for the fish biomass. And remember, these are the bad fish. This is black bullheads, carp, and fatty minnows. 90% plus of that biomass of those 3 species. But, I introduced my own next topic. There are a few of these lakes that are fishless. So a follow-up question to this, if you want to manage the Clearwater State, keep your nutrient levels low and don't have any fish at all. That's going to be the most stable system possible, right? So why are some lakes fishless and others have fish? We actually addressed that question in a study a few years ago, back in 2006. Here we studied 82 shell lakes in our Alexandria region. We've been working there forever, plus one over in Polk County. Same type of data collection, fish, chlorophyll, et cetera, et cetera. But here we use something called CART, classification regression trees, to try to model the presence versus absence